Welcome to the Emerald City Hockey Podcast. Join RJ and Dylan as they discuss each week's Seattle Kraken news and top stories from around the league.
All right, RJ, we are here with our first podcast of December. This year just keeps clicking along. I mean, it doesn't feel like that long ago that you and I started ECH.
I know, right? Time flies when you're having fun.
I know. Been doing podcasts for a little while now, since August, I believe, and then doing the videos for even longer. It's crazy, coming up on a year. Absolutely nuts. But we're happy to be here, and of course we got to start with one of the most requested things across any of our platforms, and that was of course Shaq's Big Chicken review at Climate Pledge Arena. You finally got to have some, without beating around the bush. Let's just get into that.
Yes. So finally, the moment everyone waited for, at the Kraken's last game against the Oilers. Got to give the people what they want. So I decided it was time. I was going to do my review for Shaq's Big Chicken at Climate Pledge Arena. Got the chicken sandwich, and so for those who didn't see the video, I got the regular chicken sandwich and just the fries. It comes with the chicken sandwich and fries together. $16. It'll run you about $17.30 after tax. And I gave the chicken sandwich a 7 out of 10 and the fries an 8.5 out of 10. Some of the points I want to hit on here. I got their regular chicken sandwich. It's called the MDE. It's good for what it is. Like the chicken fillet was, nice and moist. It's got the crisp on the outside. That was good. The Shaq sauce left a little bit to be desired as far as like from a spice perspective. I like my chicken sandwiches really spicy. That's me. I want a little kick to it. It didn't have that, but I think I just ordered the wrong sandwich. There's also what's called an Uncle Jerome, which is like a Nashville hot chicken sandwich. I will definitely be ordering that one next time, just given my taste. But I got the regular chicken sandwich, and for what it is, I thought it did pretty well. The fries, now I feel like the fries are going to be something that's very divisive because they're very crispy, like almost like potato chips crispy. They look like steak fries. They've got that shape to them, except they're really thin. They're like really thin steak fries, and they've got like that kind of crunch to them. Some of them, I mean, just like actual proper crunch to them. So I like that. I like my fries with a lot of crisp on them, but I know that that's not the case for everyone. So I feel like that's going to get a lot of mixed opinions. And as far as the amount of food, like it was a good amount of food. I hadn't eaten since noon at that point, and the game was, I was like 6:30 by the time I was eating, and I was full. Didn't even have any of like the press bridge food or anything later because I just stayed full. So good amount of food. And yeah, I definitely want to try the Uncle Jerome at some point too.
Yeah, it's still always so funny, between the two of us anyway, right? You talking about liking spice,
Right?
as I'm the person over here drowning everything in hot sauce and all sorts of stuff everywhere. But it sounds like the Uncle Jerome's would be for me for sure. Yeah, and at least it does sound, and it seemed like a decent amount of food given the price, right? Obviously, arena prices for food anywhere is ridiculous. Certainly these new arenas, it's even more so. But you think
sure.
it was, at least comparable to stadium food price to food wise.
Yes, and so that's the ultimate point. Really, is just that it's a good amount of food for what you're paying, like given that it's arena food, you're not going to find something that's a whole lot cheaper there. And, at least if you're paying that kind of money for food, it's something that's going to keep you full all game.
Yeah, no, that is definitely good. And yes, I could see those fries being divisive. I'm someone that likes a little bit of a lighter, fluffier fry myself, so don't know if they're for me.
Probably not your thing then.
Yeah, but thank you so much for doing that. I know everybody was looking forward to it. Moving into this week's slate of games, only 3 games since our last podcast, and the Kraken went 2-0-1 in that time. Obviously, they finished out that little, kind of brief road trip, 4-game road swing. Kraken have been looking fantastic. They've continued everything from last week when they were beating these good teams and everything, carried that over. We'll start with the Buffalo game all the way back on last Monday. 7-4 win for Seattle. I mean, still the first thing that comes to mind when I think about this game is the Buffalo boards.
Yes, those bouncy end boards. Yeah, they created an interesting element to that game for sure.
Yeah, but otherwise it was the shorthanded goals that was huge.
That's what I think about first, is those two shorthanded goals in the first period.
Yeah, to kick off the game, those awesome two shorthanded goals, first two in franchise history. Great to see that. That Brandon Tanev one still just sticks with me. The single-handed effort through that whole thing to make it happen was absolutely phenomenal. But it was also Will Borgen revenge game.
Yes, and it was great to see him out there. Will Borgen had been freed, I think, for that earlier game against Florida first. And he played a great game. His second really good game in a row. And I know that a lot of Sabres fans still big fans of Will Borgen. I see it on Twitter all the time. They love him, hoping the Kraken would waive him. And I'm glad that it never came to that, because I thought Borgen was great.
Yeah, and gets his first point in that game. Lots of good stuff there. Really, missing him obviously in the lineup. These last couple games, been missing him some. Otherwise, I mean, it was just kind of a complete team performance. I know Buffalo got a couple, in the third period, but really the game was all but put away at that point. So I'm not too worried about those. This was just a really solid Kraken, dominant victory.
Yeah, it did get a little sloppy at the end there from the Kraken, which is only a point of concern if you see it continue into future games, and knowing what's happened the next two games after that, it didn't. So I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I think that was just,
I mean, the fact that the game was
pretty
much decided. Yeah.
Yeah, the game was decided. You're riding high a little bit. The other thing I guess we should touch on for this game was it was another good Drieger performance.
Yes, which was great to see. And it finally seemed like everything had turned the corner, and we've got this great two-headed tandem, and Drieger's good to go. And, then of course it all comes crashing down soon after. But good to see that from him, at least, while he was healthy and able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, the story of this game is the story of what happened in the couple days, between this one and the next one, which is everybody got hurt.
Exactly. It was a brutal game from that perspective, for sure.
Right. So you have Eberle go down in that one. Schwartz somehow disappears between that one and the next game. Borgen gets hurt. Drieger, of course, goes back on IR. Giordano's out with COVID still, like as of today, right?
Yeah, and a little interesting tidbit that we learned at practice today. Giordano is still physically in Florida.
Interesting.
Yeah, because he obviously couldn't come back with the team, on the team plane and everything because of COVID. But yeah, he's still physically in Florida.
Yeah, so that means he's, still, I would assume, then testing positive. And I mean, do we know if he has been sick at all?
They haven't really given us a whole lot of information about whether he's sick, how he's actually feeling. Hackstall has hinted a couple times that he's probably ready to come back soon. And that, he should be able to come off protocol soon. So that tells me that maybe he's probably feeling okay and up to it. But, there's certain steps you have to take in the protocol to be able to get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we were all, at this point, assuming this was more than just a close contact thing, just given how long it had gone on. So good to hear that update from Hackstall. So between that Monday and then the Detroit game on December 1st, you have all those guys get hurt and leave the lineup, enter that Detroit game, and, Detroit, they've been playing pretty well this year, better than I think a lot of people expected them to. They've got a ton of great rookies that are all putting up great performances for them so far this year. We saw that in this game even. But, we saw the Kraken do something again, another franchise first. I love that we keep getting these. A shootout. Now, result didn't go our way, and we can certainly get into the questionable shootout lineup for the Kraken, but it was still exciting nonetheless.
For sure. And it took 23 games, which I wonder, I guess the shootout's only really existed for two, recent franchises coming in, but I feel like it probably didn't take Vegas 23 games to get their first shootout. But that was cool to see. And it seemed like there were also a lot of just different rule book type of things, where a newer fan watching that game had a lot of introduction to, different wrinkles in the rules, whether it's like the first time you've seen a shootout or a couple goals disallowed for different reasons. But overall, it was just a really gutsy effort from the Kraken against Detroit. Detroit's not a team that's going to, ever roll over. They're going to make you earn everything that you get. And the Kraken being as banged up as they were, they needed really a full effort from that team to beat Detroit, and they got it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of reminiscent to the Carolina game from the previous week, where it was, this is one of those games where you've just got to button down and kind of grind it out in a lot of ways. Obviously, this one a little more high scoring than that 2-1 affair, but it definitely had that as far as, obviously needing to come back to tie it late. Donato getting that done with his second of the night. Good to see that from him. As individual performances, not like too many stood out in this one for me. Obviously, Donato, like I said, had the 2 goals. It was more of like a complete game from the Kraken, which we are seeing a lot more of, and I'm really happy to see that, because I think that's what was kind of missing before. During the losing streak, they at times, yes, it was like, okay, it's on Lauzon or whatever, because he let soft defense on one thing, or Grubauer let in a soft goal, but it did feel like a lot of okay, the lines aren't quite gelling, D pairs are all over the place sometimes, right? Like all throughout that losing streak, it still kind of felt like it was a team thing. And so it's nice that now that things are, turning around, we can really look at this win streak or at least point streak and stuff, and look and say, this is, the whole team has turned around, and they're all grooving together.
For sure. And they kind of have a level that they feel that they can play to. It was interesting, again, after practice today, hearing Jordan Eberle talk about it, and kind of the way that he phrased it is the way they think about it. He said that they really kind of set a standard for how they want to play. And he mentioned that game against Washington as kind of the time it really turned around. He said before that, we really didn't have a standard that we kind of felt we all needed to play to, that we had achieved, something we could look back at. This is how we want to play. And now that they have that standard, they can kind of look back and just try and achieve that every single game. And he said that just makes it a lot easier going forward to know, all right, this is how we want to play.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else from the Red Wings game you want to talk about?
I got to mention Yanni Gourde one more time, just like how much energy he had in that game. Didn't show up. Yeah, he showed up on the score sheet a little bit, but like he wasn't as prominent as Donato, but just the nonstop energy from Yanni Gourde. Like that was a heck of a game from him.
Yeah, and I guess we should touch on the 2 disallowed goals, just in case anybody wasn't around for the post-game live for that one. So
that's a good idea.
Yeah, the first one, taking a Kraken goal off the board, goalie interference call on Mason Appleton. It was a good call. I could see particularly new fans kind of going like, well, the Detroit defenders kind of, pushing and leaning on him. Maybe that drives him into the goalie. And then certainly the goalie, he skates up in his crease a little bit and helps make sure that the contact is there. So I could see new fans being, kind of like, why is that called on Appleton when Detroit is, also involved on that? And the bottom line is that that's just one of those, kind of black and white calls. When it happens, it gets called. Yes, you will see them sometimes, waved off after review if they really do feel like the defender pushes the player in there. But usually it has to be pretty egregious.
Exactly. It takes a pretty obvious shove or something that's, very, very clear. It takes a lot. And especially if it takes place in the crease. Mm-hmm. That in that goal crease, in that blue paint, the goalie is almost always going to get the benefit of the doubt there.
Yeah. And so it's, upsetting in that one game we didn't get that goal, but just know it will even out going the other way at some point later on for the Kraken. And then on the other one, we get to take a Detroit goal off the board thanks to review, get to see that the guy is offsides. It was a challenge by Hackstall. Was that the first challenge from Hackstall, or at least first successful one yet?
I think it might have been. I can't think of another one.
I can't either.
Yeah, it might be. And I want to give credit to the video staff led by video coach Tim Ohashi to catch that too, because like Dave Haxtell can't be looking at that. He's got to coach the game. He can't be monitoring that stuff. What happens is they have these video coaches who are watching these things on tablets, kind of behind the scenes live, and they will catch that on the entry. They'll see it's offside. Wire that information over to Haxtell, and Haxtell will go ahead and challenge it. But it's a stressful job too, because if you're wrong, then a power play goes back on the board against you, and it's tough. It's a high stakes game. But credit to the Kraken video staff there.
Yeah, for we'll go ahead and explain that. For new fans, in hockey you're allowed one challenge a game. But if you don't get that challenge, it goes as a minor penalty for delay of game, essentially. And so you give the other team a power play. So you got to make sure that you get that one right, that one opportunity you can, which is why we don't see it thrown around too often. But when you use it in these situations, right? Linesman missed a close offsides call. It was really, really close.
It was.
But he did miss it. Kraken were able to catch it, like you said, and get the call corrected and take what would have been a pretty soft goal allowed from Grubauer off the board. Sure. Definitely bailed him out there. But I'll kind of keep what you were talking about with other coaches watching tablets and stuff, and we'll segue into this last game against the Oilers. Lots of stuff to talk about from this one, but I believe it was Paul McFarland, right, that took the puck to the forehead. Assistant coach for the Kraken took the puck to the forehead, kept on working, even though he had sprung a little bit of a leak, being worked on by the training staff. But if you saw, literally just seconds after it happened, he was just right back down on his tablet, looking on stuff, working on stuff while the training staff worked on him. It's just about impossible to be around hockey and not to be tough. It's just something that goes with the job, whatever job it is. But yes, that was another example of, all the assistant coaches have tablets there. The coaches have tablets. You can see them on the bench behind them. A lot of times when they're showing like Hackstall and stuff on the TV broadcast, you can see them there. I know, I don't know if it's every arena, but a lot of them have them down at the floor of the boards, so players can look down at them and see stuff, or coaching staffs can look down and stuff. So it's a little bit more hidden than, let's say, football, right, where there's just like 1,000 surface tablets everywhere. But there are plenty there, and the coaching staff and the players do look at that stuff throughout the game.
Shout out to McFarland. Didn't miss a shift. Went right back to it. That's toughness right there. And Hackstall gave him credit there after the game too. Said he should have been first star.
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, lots of stuff to talk about with this one. First division win for the Kraken.
Yes, it's about time, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the way in December. But I think they played 6 prior to that. There was 0-6 before this one.
Yeah, because there's couple Vegas games, Duck game,
Vancouver.
Yeah, Vancouver. Yeah, so something like that.
Yeah. So but the first division win, I mean, that's big to get that out of the way, given the way that the schedule is, and especially how division oriented the playoff format is. You certainly want to do well against your own division, and not just any team in the Pacific. The Oilers, who are certainly one of the top teams in the division. I mean, it's a real statement win to show they've kind of arrived within the division.
Yeah, and someone in chat was talking, that's their first division loss for the Oilers. So that is a big deal. Continuing the trend for the Kraken of kind of being giant slayers in a lot of ways, right? You come off wins against Capitals, Hurricanes, you get that first loss at home for Florida, you bring that to them. Just continuing this trend of, we were worried about at certain points during the losing streak. You and I were asked several times, are the Kraken a team that just plays down to their competition? Maybe that was the case during some of that. I still think they were figuring some things out lineup wise and strategy wise. But certainly now you can say they are capable of playing up to anybody in the NHL.
For sure. And that's so big for your confidence to just know that no matter who the opponent is in front of you, you're capable of beating them. And one thing that, it was mentioned a little bit, but one thing we really have to emphasize is that they did this without Jaden Schwartz and Jordan Everly. I mean, like 2 of their top scorers out of the lineup, and they still beat the Oilers convincingly.
Yeah, and that's again because the team played really well as a whole. Everybody was stepping up. We talked a lot about it on the post game. Jeremy Lazon had a really good game in that game. Like
He did.
no real negatives to talk about there. He stepped up. Cole Lynn stepping up, getting his first point. That's big. Guys like both in the Detroit game and in this one, Ryan Donato playing really well. Had a great job to set up Yanni Gourde to kick off the game. Was it 49 seconds into this one? Kraken are on the board thanks to that. That's huge to start a game off like that, especially on one that the goalie feels that they should have had, right? Maybe you get inside his head a little bit, getting Skinner's head a little bit there. Riley Sheahan coming back up, joining this lineup.
Yep.
He's been playing really well through these last couple games, I thought, centering that fourth line, bringing a lot to the, not just defensively, but, especially on the PK. He's been playing really, really well there. And, just Appleton's been playing well. Colin Blackwell with a great backhanded goal in this one.
Yes, that was awesome. Love the celebration too.
For sure. It was just like a complete team effort. They knew they were going to have to, everybody was going to have to give an A effort on this one if they were going to beat the Oilers. Again, barely get it done, right? 4-3. But it's, that's just because it's the Oilers and you are missing so many people if you're the Kraken. But I got to think that bodes really well for them in the future as, the team gets healthy and everything moves forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so really cannot, state enough the big turnarounds here as far as, the team, the lines being figured out, the defensive pairings getting figured out, and just the systems the coaching staff have, really implemented, right? We talked a lot about not having systems. We talked last week about what's been working. The systems are there, and we saw a little bit over the course of this week, the systems are even evolving. As the weeks go by, the coaching staff is trying to stay ahead of other teams, maybe watching video about what the Kraken are doing. And so I think that's a huge deal. It as much as I was just saying, the team is all playing together, the coaching staff is, right there with them, on everything. And that was something that was definitely in doubt before. Glad to know that it isn't now. All right. So those are our game reviews out of the way. We got a couple more fun topics and stuff to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and deviate slightly from what our schedule was for this, RJ, because one of these is more hockey related and on ice related than the others. So I think we should go ahead and jump into that. And that is Mason Appleton. Obviously lots of Jake DeBrusk talk of being traded out of Boston. Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet did his normal 32 Thoughts column and had mentioned Mason Appleton's name in that. You and I talked a little bit about that on our first Patreon exclusive podcast where we cover more things league wide, but we thought it was worth bringing up, just kind of talking about Mason Appleton as a trade bait prospect, so to speak.
Yeah, and he's someone who was definitely highly regarded and seemed like there was a lot of interest around him around the expansion draft as well. I mean, he's someone I think the Jets really hated to lose. It was just kind of a numbers game as far as who they had to protect. There were talks of the Jets trading him right before the expansion draft. They couldn't end up getting a deal done, so they lost him. But he's definitely someone who's probably has interest around the league. And for good reason. We saw what he did in Winnipeg last season. He can be, really kind of greasy, drive to the net type forward. He supplies some offense. He's not afraid to use his body, that sort of thing. We hadn't really seen it from him early on in the season with the Kraken. It was kind of a slow start for him. But these last few games, he's really started to pick it up. We've seen some of the things that we were hoping to see from him at the start of the season.
Yeah, exactly. I think, beginning of the season, things were rough. Everybody was kind of playing off, right? It took, even guys like Jordan Eberle, it took a little while for them to get going and start feeling it. And then, of course, you have that, certainly what looked like a pretty nasty ankle injury for him.
Yeah, that's always difficult. I mean, I'm surprised he wasn't out longer from that. It just looked pretty bad.
I was too. And then, obviously I got to think it takes a little while to get back into the swing of things coming off something like that. But yes, certainly these last, 4 or 5 games from him, I felt like this is the Mason Appleton we were expecting. We're seeing him be a little bit more involved offensively, helping out on forecheck, helping out just with the overall possession and control that the Kraken are showing in the offensive zone. And then going back the other way, the dude is, he's one of those busy bee kind of guys where he's just always buzzing around. He's always in passing lanes for the other team, especially in transition. He just has this knack for always kind of being where the team wants to go. You can tell they'll make a read and they'll look and then they'll see Appleton and then you can see that they'll have to go somewhere else with it. And I think that that gets into other teams' heads, right? He isn't necessarily picking off passes and stuff, but he's altering what it is that they want to be doing, and that is something that is very important over the course of a game. So I've been happy with him kind of all the way around. I do get it, right? Kraken are an extremely deep team, offense and defensively. They just have a lot of guys. I guess my first thing is I'm hesitant to say that they should be trading anybody just because, as we've already seen this year, between COVID and injuries, they've essentially needed all of these people at one point or another.
Absolutely. I mean, you feel good with everyone healthy and boom, the next play game against Buffalo and you got 5 guys out of the lineup. It's tough. And it's good to have that depth. And I think that's something that as the season goes on, that could be a competitive advantage for the Kraken over some of these other teams that didn't, go through the expansion draft process the way the Kraken did, making 30 picks. That gives you kind of depth that other teams really can't match. Appleton in particular, I think he's really found a spot on the lineup now that he's playing well. I mean, they put him with Wenberg and Johansson, so he's kind of got a top 6 role there. I mean, really, they've got these top 3 lines that all kind of rotate, but he has a spot there where he's stayed, and I think the team seems to like him there too. He's helped out Wenberg, he's helped out Johansson. I think that line has done well.
Yeah, me too. I've liked that look as we've been talking about, kind of all the stuff recently, all the changes that they've made and all of that. Yeah, so for me, I guess I'm hesitant to say anybody should be traded except maybe someone, a defenseman, just because it is hard to carry so many defensemen. Just because of the injury factor and the COVID factor is still very much a part of this season. So that leads me to maybe want to be a little bit more conservative. We've already seen that the Kraken have lost guys just because it's hard to carry so many around. But that's my first reason for maybe not wanting to move Appleton or look into it. The second thing is I think, it really depends on what the Kraken's season-long goals are. Right? It was really easy to say during the losing streak, okay, maybe this season it's just going to be an expansion team. It's a great draft class coming up. It won't be the worst thing in the world if we just kind of, take a punt on this first season, maybe a little bit, trade some guys that have value, and then look towards next year where we're going to have a lot of, cap space and stuff that we can work with and then try to build a good team then. But now that they're playing so well and they're beating all of these top NHL teams, things seem to be more on track with what everybody was thinking as far as this being a playoff team. If the Kraken internally still very much view themselves as a playoff team and that is the goal, I think, again, you want to have somebody like Mason Appleton around for the long haul and then certainly into the playoffs where just his energy and his style of play can really start paying off some big dividends for you.
And that's something that we've noticed about the Kraken's roster kind of from the expansion draft, is this looks like a team that's built to do well in the playoffs. I mean, you've got to get there. That's the challenge. But once you do, you have a lot of guys that will be even more valuable for you in a playoff series when you're kind of matching against the same team. It's this attrition battle. Appleton's one of those guys. And we have kind of seen the conversation change, right? Around this team and what the expectations are now. And I think a lot of that trade talk, whether it's Appleton or, we've heard Giordano's name kind of float around, that all kind of stemmed from a time, a couple weeks ago when it looked like, okay, this team might be contending for a top 5 lottery pick here. But really, I think, it's all changed now. I think we can talk about getting back in the playoff race and that sort of thing, and certainly not ready to punt on the season.
Yeah, so I'm of the opinion that I don't think a trade is likely involving Appleton. How about you?
I don't think it is. Certainly not the way he's played the last few games. He's picked it up basically as soon as that was put out there on 32 Thoughts. Every game since then, he's been really good. So, yeah, I don't think we'll see that.
Yes. Now, playing devil's advocate essentially to both of us, let's both play devil's advocate to ourselves in a way.
All right.
And let's talk about if a trade was to take place, right? Guys don't just get thrown around. Their names don't get thrown around by Elliot Friedman, every day, so to speak, right? Like he was specifically mentioned, Mason Appleton. So let's say that there is something there. Um, you and I think both think Winnipeg's probably the most likely trade partner in a Mason Appleton deal.
Yeah, they'd love to get him back. I mean, they know exactly what he brings. They saw what he did last season. Yeah, I think they'd love to get him back.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit. We don't have to totally get into the weeds of really trying to figure out trades for Mason Appleton, particularly if we don't really think he's going to be moved. But like from a Kraken perspective, if they do decide to trade Mason Appleton, let's say everybody gets healthy and all of a sudden roster space, it's a tight squeeze again. What for you would you be looking at? A return? Are you wanting another depth player, or are you just trying to take on draft picks and just ease kind of this, tight roster space stuff?
I mean, I guess I'd be looking for draft picks. Almost seem to make the most sense just given, the numbers game of the roster. Because if you bring in another player, then you have the same problem as far as trying to create space, right? And you're not looking to bring in a defenseman, certainly not given how many defensemen you have. So it's going to be another forward. I mean, I guess you'd have to feel like it's some kind of, like for like deal where you're getting a forward that's, I guess, a little bit better of a fit for what you're trying to do. Or maybe a younger forward that's waiver exempt. That would be another kind of return, or prospect, draft pick, something like that, where you don't have to do the roster calculation basically anymore with Appleton. You can kind of remove him from that. And it's really tough to find a fit like that. Jake DeBrusk is one of the names that's been thrown out there, and you kind of have to look at DeBrusk and just think that he's better for what you're doing. He's a better fit for your offense, and maybe the goal scoring he brings is better than what Appleton can do. But as you've mentioned in the past, I don't really know that DeBrusk is a better fit than Appleton, given the way that Appleton's playing now.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I think you'd be looking at draft pick compensation, which again, that would have maybe seemed okay, 3 weeks ago when it seemed like that was the trajectory of the season. But if the season is, okay, we're getting back into the playoff chase, we think we got a good shot at that, we want to be competitive in the playoffs, then yeah, I just don't really see it because, as you said, it's not like you're making a move to clear out and shed some salary here, right? Mason Appleton isn't costing you that much.
He's not an upcoming UFA. You still have his rights.
Right. He's going to be an RFA, so you've got that working in your favor. Really, the only reason I could see them making a move is because they don't want to necessarily be put in a situation where they're going to have to lose someone else for free, essentially, on waivers, like they had to do with Bastion. And so Appleton becomes the guy maybe that then gets moved out just because he has the most value. I think that's really the only path to a Mason Appleton trade. Again, not saying I want it to happen. I don't think that's what either of us are saying, but just looking at it practically, I think that's what it would take. In which case, yeah, I mean, I would try to get something. Do you think you could get like a second rounder for Mason Appleton?
I think it's possible. I think you could. Yeah, certainly if he continues playing the way he has. I mean, I think that was about the rumored value for him around the expansion draft, and I don't think that value has probably changed a whole lot in the time since.
Certainly not if you're looking on like a trade deadline day where,
Oh, absolutely. Prices can get inflated, that's for sure.
Exactly. Unfortunately, he's not, some weird third line center with some great face-off percentage where you can see those guys all of a sudden go for firsts on trade deadline days. Always think of Paul Gostad.
Paul Gostad.
Yep, that's always the one that comes to mind.
Gostad.
Yep. Not quite there, but yeah, I think that would be a decent return to get for him if the Kraken feel like they're in a situation where they need to do that. I don't think they are right now. I think the smart move is to keep him around. I think we're both on the same page there. All right, so that's kind of it for the podcast as far as on ice stuff. We still got some fun stuff to talk about. The first thing being mascot thoughts, because we're still waiting on that. We keep being told that it's coming.
Yes, and it will happen before the end of the year. I heard that from multiple sources around. That's what I'm hearing. It will be in the month of December. So, what is it? The 5th today we're recording, so they've got about 26 days to get that ready to go. But yes, the Kraken will be revealing a mascot in the month of December. And I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I don't know how many times we've talked about, we've plugged our video that we did the
I
mascot
know.
ideas. If you somehow have not seen it yet, go ahead and watch it. But yeah, what do you think, Dylan, as far as, a mascot, now that we've actually seen some of the game presentation,
Hmm.
we've seen what kind of look they're going for. I mean, that video we made was, before the expansion draft,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's just we didn't have much of a clue as far as what they'd really be going for. But now that we've seen a lot of these things, what are you thinking in terms of a mascot? Is there kind of one direction that you think they're more likely to go now? And why is it Sigmund the Sea Monster?
Exactly. I think that one maybe not is out a little bit, because one of the things I was going to say is, as far as their actual game presentation goes, it really solidified in my mind they're going to want, the mascot costume to be one that is very, it can move. That whoever
Mhm.
is wearing it is going to be able to participate in things and be able to, walk up and down the aisles and stuff. So maybe something that doesn't have, let's say, arms, like one of my suggestions, or certainly Sigmund the Sea Monster, that's maybe just like a big, maybe too wide to be going down certain things, or your Anchor Man.
I was gonna say
Uh,
my suggestion of Anchorman, who probably can't fit down an aisle comfortably.
yeah, certainly not without, poking people, poking their eyes or hitting the backs of their heads or something. So in my mind, that's the big thing that I've taken away from the in-game experience from the Kraken, is that they like to keep everything upbeat, up tempo, especially, and so they're gonna want somebody that can kind of keep with that pace and isn't gonna kind of slow things down. Like, oh, when it's the mascot segment, they're just kind of planted in one spot and not really able to do much. So that's, as far as that goes, that's really where I'm coming from. What about you?
I guess my other takeaway, because I agree with yours, you want a mascot that's going to be kind of active, involved, that certainly fits with what they've done game presentation wise. Um, I think also you've seen kind of the nautical theme, where it's really just like a general nautical theme. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, a kraken or a sea monster. I think we could still see like a pirate type of thing, or a Davy Jones type of thing. I think we could see a what was I going for? There's the pirate, and then there's something else.
I
I
mean,
don't
there's
remember.
there's
Oh,
all sorts.
Like your Poseidon idea or
Mhm.
something like that. That's the other one I was trying to think of, where I could see it being like a person type of, more person-like mascot as well, and that helps you also with being active and involved in things, easy to move around, not a big mascot suit.
Yeah, I'm looking up right now, to see if Captain Nemo is in the public domain,
Ooh, okay.
because that would be something. Obviously, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yep.
Um, yeah, okay, it was written in 1869 by Jules Verne, so I got to think Captain Nemo's in the public domain. That's why he's used in a lot of stuff, I
Right.
would assume. So, that's
Under
an
the current
option
copyright laws, if it was written today, it'd be not in the public domain
for
200,
sure.
300 years from now. But
Yes, for sure. But given when it was done, so I think, that could be another kind of fun option. You had mentioned under your pirate idea, maybe, right? The pirate is always out hunting the kraken, and you can have some fun with that. Just Captain Nemo, right, with the giant squid and stuff. Like,
yep.
there's some stuff there. So I could see something like that if they want to go with that. They do seem committed around the arena to the idea of, fear the deep, the depths, all that stuff,
Mhm.
wanting it to take place underwater more so than, just on the water, I think. And so that, again, right, Captain Nemo with the Nautilus, he's down there. He's always doing stuff below the water. That could be a direction if they want to go kind of with, something a little different than what you and I had already talked about.
Yeah, I like that idea.
But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting because, really this last home game, it seems like, is when we saw the most kind of progress as far as like pre-game and stuff.
Hmm.
You were there, I wasn't, so I guess you could talk about it more.
I mean, it wasn't a whole lot different. They had some lights that they didn't have before. They had a little more of an extended kind of pregame show as far as showing, but a lot of it was highlights projected on the ice, that sort of thing that we have seen before. They also had, like the eyes, with the other team coming out. That was cool.
Mhm.
So, a lot of the projection kind of stuff. In game, it was pretty similar. And the thing is, mostly you see the mascot in game, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the usage. It's not really part of the pregame show usually. Sometimes it is to like pump up, the fans or whatever going on the ice, or rappelling from the ceiling, which can has its
mixed
pitfalls
results.
sometimes.
Jumping
Yeah.
through a ring of fire like Wild Wing
Yes.
may or may not also have certain pitfalls.
Yeah. So you see it sometimes. But yeah, it's something that the mascot can do, within the game presentation. So also, Dylan, like you went to a couple home games, you've kind of seen how they, present everything through the whole game. Like, where do you think the mascot is going to kind of fit in? Because they have certain intermission entertainment, they have like commercial break type entertainment. Like, where would you kind of slot in the mascot? It's hard to say not knowing exactly what the mascot is going to be, but let's say it's something like what we talked about. Like, where would you try and fit the mascot in?
Yeah, so I think they're gonna want to do stuff in the crowd, whether it's out in the concourse, but especially then, also in between the aisles, right, on the stairwells, staircases, going up and down the sections and stuff. I think they're gonna want to utilize the mascot there a lot, which is why I was thinking maybe a little bit more of a trimmed down design. That's you got some movement and stuff. Just because I feel like for the Kraken, again, their in-arena experience, they like to bounce around in a lot of ways that way, and keep the energy levels up. I think that's also something that maybe they haven't done as much as you and I have seen in other places, right? As far as having people, on those staircases and out in the crowd doing stuff, t-shirt tossing, all that kind of stuff. I feel like that's kind of the next like evolution for the in-game experience, is to bring in some of those elements. So I think the mascot will help there. But then also especially doing segments up at like, do we have a name for that? That kind of like crow's nest.
Oh yeah, that
thing?
little balcony area.
Yeah.
That I don't think it has a name. Not that I've seen.
Okay.
It needs a name.
It needs a name, and I think maybe it'll be named after, kind of in tandem with the mascot, whatever it ends up being. But obviously you're going to be doing lots of segments up there with them, I would think. Pre-game, I got to think, right, to kick off the game, they're going to be up there getting things going, just because it's a nice visible spot to put them in to help hype up the crowd and everything. So I think in that. Now, as far as what I was saying, as far as the changes Mason recently made to the pregame stuff, was because, it was really the first stretch that the team hasn't been there, so that they've been able to get in there and work on stuff. Because we know that's what, really all this holdup has been, is just it took so long for the arena to get finished that the season started and they kind of needed it to play hockey. So what I'm doing now is I'm looking at the schedule and the next, space of time in which they're going to have to maybe work on the last couple things and then really bring in anything they're going to need to bring in for the mascot is really next week, right? So you got the game against Columbus on the 11th, but then you're not back again until the following Saturday on the 18th against Edmonton. If I had to guess, if I was a betting man, which I am, I would say the 18th against Edmonton is probably when we're going to see the unveiling of the mascot, as far as if it's going to kick off in December. Because I think if you were going to do it for this stretch of home games, you would have done it back on Friday.
Right.
And that way...
That's a good observation.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that, to look at the calendar. But yeah, looking at it, it just makes so much sense. I mean, that's really kind of where they have the most time to figure everything out and get it going. I mean, the only other time I could think was, that game against Philly, like very late in the month. And I don't think it's going to be that late that they're going to release it. So yeah, I guess circle that Edmonton game on the calendar, tentatively. We'll see.
Yeah.
Can't guarantee anything, but I'm certainly going to be looking out for it, for that one.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that could throw a wrench in the works there is just because, those two away games that week are just San Jose and Anaheim. So maybe the team is, they're going to fly back in and wait to leave a little. So you might whatever there. But, that's what the other practice facility's for. Go
exactly.
The practices
the practices have mostly been at the Iceplex, and and certainly you can always move things there if you need to. For what you don't have to practice at the arena. It's just the morning skates that kind of have to be there.
Yeah, but as far as all that stuff goes, it's going to be on you, RJ, for these next couple home games. As you know, you're scurrying from the press bridge down to go to the media availability room. You come, I've done that walk with you. You walk through a lot of the underbelly of the arena there.
You
They've
do.
always got
You see a
lots
lot
of
of
stuff.
things.
You see a lot of
Yep.
stuff. So if they do, if they are getting ready to bring some stuff in after that Columbus game or anything, you might be
Yep.
able to see something, even if
Yeah,
it's
if I
just an
see
oddly shaped tarp thing.
yep, or some kind of pirate looking character who maybe looks like he shouldn't be there. Yeah, just something.
Yeah,
Or a big
certain.
old seagull costume if I,
Yeah, a
if
big
if I get what
shirtless,
I want.
a big shirtless felted Poseidon looking man, maybe.
hmm But I will certainly keep an eye out, for all of you if I see anything.
Yes. And then, so for our final topic for this podcast, this past week, RJ, again, something you and I discussed and actually did a live reaction to on that first Patreon exclusive podcast was
hmm
the Stadium Series jerseys for the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Nashville Predators. Um, they are interesting to say the least.
They sure are, and man, just seeing them live, like while we were recording, that was so fun. Like Dylan, take a look at this. Look,
Yeah.
look, look.
Yeah, no,
uh,
it was good. But it
yep,
got me thinking. So, yeah, we've certainly all of our fans, all the Kraken fans, have been discussing the ideas of things like Stadium Series games, in Seattle, and all of us have kicked around ideas of where it would take place, all of that kind of stuff, who it would be against. But one thing that maybe hasn't been talked about that this would certainly bring up is the idea of what would the jerseys look like for the Kraken in one of these events, because we do know Stadium Series generally they like to make these jerseys a lot different than what their regular jerseys look like.
for sure. They like to go way outside the box.
That is for sure. So I thought we could finish off this podcast kind of kicking around some ideas about what we think, a Seattle Kraken Stadium Series jersey could look like. I know it's probably going to be more so talking about what we wouldn't necessarily want than what it would be. But do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Here, you take the lead, Dylan. I'm sure you got some good ideas.
All right. So the first thing I thought of was this is the time to work in the Metropolitans, maybe. But
Yeah, I think that's the obvious first thought for everyone.
right, but there is a copyright issue with the Metropolitans. There's a reason they haven't used the Metropolitans. The copyright was purchased by someone really not that long ago, surprisingly.
2016 is what I heard.
Yeah, 2016, and they have not been let's just say they've got maybe some unrealistic expectations as far as what compensation might look like to use said logo and designs
Well
and
said.
everything.
Well said.
Um, certainly not. I don't know. I think you and I could find ways to be a little bit more business savvy than this person's been. So I think the Metropolitans would be out for something like this, just because if they didn't, if they weren't, if the deal can't be made for just having Metropolitan stuff around during the regular times or as an alternate jersey or anything, then I got to assume a deal for the Metropolitan stuff will be out for a Stadium Series event. So I'm just gonna,
Yes.
I know a lot of people would be thinking that, but I'm gonna go ahead and just, say, unfortunately, I don't think that that's gonna happen.
And also, if you could do it, I don't think you'd want to do it for a Stadium Series
No.
jersey that's more of a one-off. That's kind of what it's meant to be. I'd want it to be more of a full-time third jersey.
Exactly. So my first thought was I love the light blue merch that we've seen, like the sweatshirts and the hats and stuff. So I really want to bring in that kind of almost minty color. Arctic ice, I think, is what they called it.
Yep. I see ice blue on that. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it on the sweatshirts. I love it on the hats and everything. So my first thought was to go with that. However, I will say this, just from a TV production standpoint, I don't know how it would look outside, depending on if it's a sunny day or anything, just because of the light and the exposure and the kind of extra distance that the cameras have. I could see it maybe getting a little blown out or washed out. Compared to the ice. So that might be my only hesitation with, kind of choosing that fun color.
Yeah, and they do take these things into account too when, for the TV audience, it's something that they think about. That's one of the reasons, if you'll notice on a lot of these Stadium Series jerseys, the numbers on the back and on the sleeves are kind of elongated. That's for TV audiences, so it's easier to see, given that a lot of people, will kind of have a further away, like, camera point. But You beat me to it. My first thought was I really wanted to see that ice blue color as kind of a primary on a jersey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, sorry about that. You want to go into your kind of next thought then?
Yeah, I guess. Well, the other one I was thinking, because you almost have to start with a color, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have that as the backdrop for jersey. We saw Vegas go with red, which is really a minor color for them.
Mm-hmm.
Go with red for their Stadium Series jersey, and I thought it turned out fantastic. Like, I didn't think it was going to work going into it, but after seeing those jerseys, how they showed up on camera and seeing some in person, they are gorgeous.
Yeah, and the fans really embraced them too. We saw a lot of those
Yes.
at that Vegas game.
Yeah, we did see a lot of them, and I mean, I don't blame them. Like, they look fantastic. Now, do you think the Kraken could pull that off? Going with that red, because it is a color in their color set. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they could pull it off?
Yeah, just because, I mean, we've seen red pulled off by what, like 23 NHL teams at some point or another.
Yeah.
So it seems like a pretty easy color to work with.
Yep. I mean, I guess you'd want to throw in maybe like the ice blue or maybe the shadow blue with it. You don't want to look too much like the Nordiques. You got to be like wary of that. You got to make sure there's enough red so it doesn't look like just, both of them.
But really, I think that would be my only concern with the red is just because so many teams have already used it or already use it. That might be the only thing that would give me pause there.
Yeah, and one of the reasons it worked for Vegas is they're combining it with gold, which no other teams do.
Yeah.
And so it kind of creates that unique look. Versus red and blue is done by just about everyone.
Yeah. It's been around for a little while, we'll say. My next thoughts were just around, okay, what do we want on it? Because obviously a lot of the talk from this past week has been about the Smashville front and center on those Nashville Predators jerseys. So I was thinking like, okay, I put on my, NHL marketing department hat.
All right.
It's a surprisingly small and lightweight hat. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of pressure that goes alongside it compared to some other occupational hats, maybe. And I was thinking, okay, what would they want to put on here? And I was like, well, we don't have like a Smashville type slogan, but they use Fear the Deep a lot. And I was like, oh no, this is exactly what they would do is they would put Fear the, but little, and then just deep, like just big, deep right across the chest. And so I'm just here to try to will into existence that not happening. I know that's not generally how you do it.
Yeah. Speak it out of existence.
Exactly.
Yes. Thank you for doing that, because no, that is the exact type of thing they would do though, isn't it? That is like the version of Smashville, be Fear the Deep right on the front. No, I do not want to see that. Every team at some point, it feels like, seems to think that putting some kind of like text on the front of their jersey is going to be great and they can be the team to make it work. No, it never works. It never looks good. I guess the only time it ever does is like the Rangers, and that's just for so long, the diagonal Rangers. That's great. I can't think of it working a single other time. So many teams try it. The Stars with the Dallas on one of some of the worst jerseys they've had. The Thrashers again across the middle, like Jersey, as we've just. No, the text doesn't work. Give me a logo. And the Kraken have such a cool secondary logo too. Let's see something with an anchor on it. Like give me that anchor front and center. I want to see how that looks.
Yeah, or maybe that's the time to bring in, even a new kind of logo as well.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah, give me maybe the anchor kind of used for like a third jersey or something. For a one-off, yeah, maybe bring in a different logo.
Yeah. Now, that being said, you said all that about the text, and I totally agree with you. The one time I will say that maybe sometimes it works, certainly for something like a one-off jersey, is if you like hyper stylize the text, and the text makes sense. So, as like an alternative to something crazy like the Fear the Deep that I could see them wanting initially to do, I wouldn't mind the idea of there being a Kraken jersey that just says Kraken on it.
Okay.
As long as it's kind of designed around something, you could, almost make it look like it's on the, the hull of a ship, like that's the name of a ship or something. Or you can use like some sort of fun tentacle-y font to make it, right?
Yeah. Is the font like a tentacle font? Is that what you go with?
Yeah, so I could see them doing something like that, or some sort of nautical type font that makes it very much feel like that. I, I would much prefer that to any sort of slogan or nickname or anything. I think you can get away with maybe just doing Kraken. It's a shorter word too. I think that generally helps.
Yeah, no, that does help. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting like concept. I don't know also that you need that given that you have the primary logo on the regular jerseys is an S. So you still kind of have, like some text there, it's a very stylized S. You've got all the elements to it, but just kind of an image there might be better in my mind. But yeah, the Kraken could work.
I was just thinking because we don't have anything that says Kraken that isn't just like a standardized font below a logo, essentially, right? On like merch and stuff. Like I just feel like there's a ton. They did such a good job on the S, making it kind of tentacly with the red eye and all that stuff. That I thought maybe they could make something work with the Kraken that would just be again just something fun for like stickers even, right? Like just Kraken. It says Kraken. I thought that, but those are really all the thoughts I had. Obviously, it's hard to. The possibilities are endless, as the NHL shows us every time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we even got some things in there we wanted to avoid, so that's good.
Yeah, it's almost more so about that.
Look out for the most with these Stadium Series jerseys.
Yeah, and how about this? If you're going to do something with the color on the front, whether it's jagged triangles or striping or anything like that, maybe carry it over to the backside of the jersey too.
Yeah, that consistency. You could say a lot for that. It's something I'm surprised some of these jerseys haven't done, but yeah, maybe keep it around the whole jersey. There's two sides to it.
Yeah, or bring back the shiny Stadium Series logos. Like that sweet Sidney Crosby jersey I got hanging up in the closet.
Yeah, those were cool. Yeah, bring those back.
It's a nightmare to own as a jersey, I will tell you that, though, because any sort of wrinkles in the emblem there, oh my gosh, they are there forever. I'll say that. But yes, that's the alternative. But I think that's going to do it for the podcast this week. Looking ahead at the Kraken schedule, it's a pretty fun one. Another homestand here. We got the Penguins tonight for those of you listening, Monday night at 7:00. Then on Thursday, the Winnipeg Jets come to town. That should be a really fun one. Mason Appleton revenge game. We'll talk about that.
Let's go.
That one's also at 7. And then next Saturday, Columbus Blue Jackets at 7. Patrick Laine, yours and I's like off-season trade target for the Kraken. He's going to be here.
Yep, he'll be in town.
Yeah, maybe we can keep him in town. Appleton for Laine, 1-for-1. Let's do it.
Who says no?
Come on, Yarmo. We got this. We got this. All right, so that's it for this week's ECH podcast. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us as always, and we will see you all next time.